Rational moral agents don't require fetal imagery before abortion. Core claim. Rational moral agents, those who deliberate through logic, conceptual clarity, and fact-based reasoning, do not require emotionally evocative visualizations, for example, fetal images, to make morally sound decisions about abortion. Such imagery introduces interpretive noise, distorts conceptual clarity, and undermines autonomy by appealing to affective bias rather than rational deliberation. Operational breakdown. Epistemic sufficiency without visualization. Rational agents can grasp the biological, ethical, and developmental facts of fetal life through abstract reasoning and propositional knowledge. Visuals are not epistemically necessary for understanding gestational stages, moral status debates, or consequences of abortion. Example, one can reason about the moral status of a zygote versus a fetus using developmental biology and philosophical criteria such as sentience and viability without seeing either. 2. Emotional contamination of deliberation. Images of fetuses are designed to evoke emotional responses, aesthetic vulnerability, perceived innocence, or horror. These responses bypass rational filters, triggering moral intuitions that may conflict with reasoned ethical frameworks. This undermines autonomy by coercing affective alignment rather than inviting conceptual engagement. 3. Interpretive skew and semantic drift. Visuals are semantically unstable. The same image may be interpreted as a baby, a potential life, or a clump of cells, depending on prior beliefs. This amplifies worldview friction rather than resolving it, making convergence harder. Here is the rational agents require stable conceptual anchors, not emotionally loaded stimuli that shift interpretive frames. 4. Respect for autonomy and moral agency. Requiring imagery implies that agents cannot be trusted to reason abstractly, infantilizing their moral capacity. It suggests that emotional persuasion is necessary to correct or guide their decision, an ethically paternalistic stance. True respect for agency means providing conceptual tools, not emotional triggers. Application to fetal imagery. Rationalist rejection. Rational agents can conceptualize fetal development through biological facts, gestational timelines, and moral frameworks without needing visual stimuli. Imagery is epistemically redundant. It adds no propositional content that cannot be accessed through reasoned description. 2. Empiricist appeal. Empiricist ethics may argue that seeing is understanding, that moral salience emerges from direct perceptual engagement. But this introduces affective bias. The image becomes a moral trigger, not a neutral datum. Philosophical echoes. Kantian autonomy. Moral agents must act from duty and reason, not sentiment. Rawlsian veil of ignorance. Decisions should be made without emotionally charged particulars. Parfit's reductionism. Identity and moral status are conceptual, not visual. Philosophical anchors. Descartes. Knowledge must be clear and distinct. Visuals are ambiguous and emotionally loaded. Kant. Moral law arises from reason, not inclination. Imagery appeals to the latter. Rawls. Justice requires abstraction from particulars. Fetal imagery reintroduces biasing particulars. Rosen's likely position. Rationalism, conceptualism, and the limits of image. Stanley Rosen, a philosopher deeply engaged with the tension between ancient and modern thought, often emphasized the primacy of philosophical reasoning over aesthetic or emotive appeals. While he acknowledged the role of experience, he was skeptical of unexamined emotional responses as substitutes for conceptual analysis. Here's how Rosen's framework might engage philosophy as conceptual clarification. Rosen argued that philosophy must clarify concepts, not merely provoke reactions. In his critique of modernity, he warned against the collapse of reason into sentiment or ideology. Fetal imagery, in this light, would be seen as rhetorical manipulation, not philosophical argument. 2. The danger of aestheticization. Rosen was wary of aestheticizing moral discourse, where images replace arguments and beauty or horror becomes a proxy for truth. A fetus depicted in emotionally charged ways risks becoming a symbolic fetish, bypassing the conceptual thresholds necessary for moral reasoning. 3. The role of the philosopher. For Rosen, the philosopher's task is to reveal the limits of both rationalism and empiricism, but always in service of dialogical clarity. He might argue that showing a picture of a fetus before abortion presupposes a shared emotional framework, which undermines the universality of rational moral agency. Rosen's likely reframing. He might reframe the debate like this. To compel moral agents to view an image before acting is to substitute the immediacy of sensation for the labor of thought. Philosophy begins where the image ends. Summary: rational rejection of fetal imagery in abortion ethics. Core argument: rational moral agents, those who deliberate through reason, logic, and conceptual analysis, do not require visualizations of a fetus before making ethical decisions about abortion. Such imagery introduces emotional bias, distorts interpretive clarity, and undermines autonomous reasoning. Key points: epistemic sufficiency. Rational agents can understand fetal development and moral implications through abstract reasoning and factual knowledge alone. Emotional contamination. Images evoke affective responses that bypass rational filters, leading to skewed moral intuitions. Interpretive drift. Visuals are semantically unstable and subject to worldview-dependent interpretations. Autonomy and respect. Requiring imagery implies distrust in agents' rational capacity and risks paternalistic coercion. This debate echoes the philosophical divide between rationalism and empiricism, with rationalism favoring abstract moral clarity and empiricism leaning on perceptual immediacy. All moral agents must be treated as rational, pro-lifers and pro-choicers alike. Core principle: both pro-life and pro-choice advocates can be, and often are, rational moral agents. They are certainly all of a rational kind. To deny this would imply that acting from a particular conclusion disqualifies one from rational agency, or to be from a kind that is rational, which is both philosophically incoherent and ethically dangerous.